In the quiet of night, when the stars glimmer softly above Camp Half-Blood and the waves whisper along the Long Island Sound, a different kind of story begins to unfold. Not one of war cries or thunderous battles, but of the enchanted steel that rests beside sleeping heroes. Tonight, you're invited into a slower kind of journey, one that glides gently through the halls of myth and magic, where swords hum with ancient power, shields remember fallen warriors, and every weapon tells a story of its own. In the world of Percy Jackson, weapons are never just tools. They are memories, promises, curses, and legacies forged in celestial bronze, imperial gold, and shadowy Stygian iron. They whisper with the voices of gods, echo with the footsteps of heroes, and glow softly in the dreams of those who once wielded them. As you begin to relax and breathe slowly, we'll walk together through a quiet museum of the most legendary weapons in the demigod universe. You'll hear of Riptide, the blade disguised as a pen that once danced through monsters and myths in Percy's hand. You'll discover the sorrowful elegance of Zoe Nightshade's blade, reborn in Thalia's grasp. You'll drift past shields that once bore lightning and gaze gently upon cursed blades that chose their wielders with quiet malice. Each chapter of this tale is meant not to excite, but to comfort. The clanging of battle is long behind us. Now what remains is the hush of legend, the sigh of rusting metal, and the steady rhythm of stories passed down from one brave soul to another. We'll take our time through the armories of Camp Half-Blood and the forges of Hephaestus. We'll glide through Roman legions and their golden gladiae, then descend into the underworld to observe the dark beauty of Stygian forged steel and the helm of invisibility itself. Some weapons gleam proudly beneath the sun. Others brood in shadow, carried by those who knew pain more intimately than glory. Yet all of them, even the cursed ones, were carried with purpose. And tonight, as the moonlight brushes against your thoughts, we'll let those purposes unfold softly, like parchment unraveling, like an old sword being unwrapped from velvet. Imagine the warmth of a campfire and the smell of fresh forged metal. Imagine the steady hands of Beckendorf hammering sparks into history. Imagine each weapon resting beside its rightful owner, no longer needed for battle, only remembered in stories. That's where we'll begin. You do not need to stay awake for all of them. In fact, the longer you listen, the heavier your eyelids may grow. And that's perfectly okay. This tale is made to carry you gently, like a river of ancient magic, through every magical weapon in Percy Jackson's world. So let your shoulders relax, your thoughts soften, and your breathing slow. Let the enchanted still speak in calm tones. Let the hilt of a hero's blade rest beside you. Because even in the most dangerous worlds, even in a story filled with monsters and mayhem, there is always a moment when the weapons are sheathed and the warriors sleep. And tonight, so will you. Among all the magical weapons in Percy Jackson's world, none is more iconic, more familiar, or more quietly powerful than Riptide, anaklusmos in ancient Greek. A blade that begins its life not in fire, but as a simple ballpoint pen in the hands of a young boy who never asked to be a hero. Percy Jackson's sword is no ordinary weapon, and yet it doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't boast in flame or howl like thunder. Instead, it sits patiently in Percy's pocket, disguised as a pen, until the moment it is needed. And when that moment comes, it transforms in a flash of celestial bronze, humming softly with divine power, a weapon worthy of a demigod son of Poseidon. Forged by the god Hephaestus and once wielded by Hercules himself, Riptide carries history within its edge, a history of battles fought for the sake of mortals and gods alike. It is made of celestial bronze, a metal that slices through monsters, ghosts, and divine enemies, yet passes through mortals like mist, never harming those not meant to be harmed. This choice of material speaks to something deeper. Percy's blade is not a tool of chaos or destruction. It is a guide, a protector, a line drawn between the monstrous and the human. When Percy first receives it from Chiron, disguised as a substitute Latin teacher, it feels like fate unfolding in his hand. And even before he understands its full history, the sword becomes an extension of his will, fierce when it must be, but always steady, never cruel. The magic of Riptide lies not just in its ability to reappear in Percy's pocket, no matter how many times it's lost, thrown, or taken away. It lies in the way it grounds Percy through every moment of uncertainty. From his first true fight with a fury in the lightning thief, to the battles atop Mount Olympus, to the war against Gaia and the giants, Riptide remains a constant. Not because Percy is always sure of himself, but because the sword is. It doesn't break. It doesn't bend. It doesn't judge. It simply returns, again and again. Like Percy himself, that return, the quiet click of a pen transforming into a blade, becomes symbolic of Percy's growth. Each time he draws Riptide, he steps deeper into his identity as a hero. The weight of it changes not in grams, but in memory. It remembers the monsters it's slain, the friends it's protected, and the gods it's defied. In its blade are reflections of Annabeth's face in battle, Grover's cries for help, Tyson's loyalty, and even Luke's tragic fall. It holds the history of those Percy has fought for, and those he's lost. And yet, it never falters. The sword doesn't speak, but it listens. In those moments of stillness between battle, when Percy watches the sea with quiet thoughts, Riptide rests beside him, silent, steady, waiting. It doesn't crave blood. It doesn't shine for glory. It simply is. Like the ocean Percy calls home, it is vast in what it represents. Calm and chaos, silence and fury, memory and myth. The design of the blade, while rarely described in ornate detail, is imagined by many readers as elegant and unassuming. No unnecessary jewels or grandeur. Because Riptide was never about impressing others. It was about survival, purpose, heart. And it reflects Percy's very soul. Brave, flawed, deeply loyal, and always caught between two worlds. Even the name, Anaklusmos, meaning Riptide, speaks volumes. A riptide is invisible until it pulls you under. It moves with unseen power. It's not the crashing wave, but the pull beneath it. Just like Percy. Just like the path of a hero. The beauty of Riptide is also in how it becomes Percy's anchor. While demigods around him struggle with deadly powers, shifting loyalties, and burdens too great for young shoulders, Percy's sword never lets him forget who he is. It brings him back. It reminds him of the boy who just wanted to survive middle school, who loved his mom more than anything, who didn't ask for Olympus to notice him. And that reminder becomes more and more important with every trial, especially when Percy is underwater, alone, in Tartarus itself. There, in the deepest pit of fear, surrounded by monsters older than time, it's not the gods who save him. It's not prophecy. It's the grip of a familiar sword in his hand, glowing faintly with the warmth of every memory it carries. Even in that abyss, Riptide is with him, silent, ready, loyal. And when he fights beside Annabeth, struggling upward through the horror of that place, Riptide becomes not just a sword, but hope in blade form. It becomes the thing that still obeys Percy's will when nothing else does. A spark of control in a world gone dark. And when they rise again into the light, when the weight of Tartarus finally falls behind, Riptide is still there. Not corroded, not changed, just waiting, just like always. The sword is also a bridge between stories. It connects Hercules to Percy. It represents the passed-down torch of heroism. But unlike Hercules, Percy never uses the blade for fame. He doesn't carve statues. He doesn't chase songs sung in his name. He fights to protect his friends, to keep his promises, to stand up for those without power. And that's what makes Riptide shine brighter than any enchanted jewel or flaming blade. It's the sword of a boy who grew into a hero not because he was told to, but because he chose to. And that's the real magic. Even when the story grows dark, when gods fall and titans rise, when loyalties crumble and the future hangs in the balance, Riptide does not leave. Its magic is not explosive. It's not loud. It's patient, faithful, like the heartbeat of the sea. And just like Percy, it refuses to quit. So as we begin this gentle journey through every magical weapon in Percy Jackson's world, we start not with thunder or spectacle, but with the soft click of a pen. A pen that becomes a sword that becomes a legend, and a legend that rests beside a sleeping hero, still glowing, still waiting, still true. Among the most graceful, ancient, and sorrowfully beautiful weapons in the world of Percy Jackson are the silver blades wielded by the hunters of Artemis, a sisterhood of eternal maidens who roam the world under the guidance of the moon goddess. These blades are not forged in the fires of war or meant to signal brute strength. Instead, they embody precision, elegance, and immortality, a reminder that not all battles are fought for glory. They are carried by maidens who have turned away from the distractions of mortality, sworn never to fall in love, and pledged their lives in service to Artemis. Chief among them, and perhaps the most unforgettable, is Zoe Nightshade, the stoic lieutenant whose blade glimmers like starlight and speaks of a time long before Percy was born. Her weapon, a curved hunting blade etched with ancient Greek patterns, is as silent and serious as she is. Zoe's blade tells a story not just of battle, but of loss, of loyalty stretching across centuries, of a daughter of Atlas who chose the moon over the mountain. When she fights, she moves like silver wind, fluid, deliberate, deadly. Her blade cuts not with violence, but with meaning. In every strike is a vow to protect her sisters, to stand against evil, to uphold a code as old as Artemis herself. Zoe's sword is a reflection of her soul, ancient, proud, burdened. And yet, even when the stars begin to fade from her eyes, and the prophecy marches her toward death, she does not falter. Her blade remains steady, even as she stands on the cliffs of Mount Tamalpais, wounded and weary, still ready to fight. It is not the gods who mourn her most, but her sisters, and perhaps, in some quiet place, the moon. Then comes Thalia Grace, daughter of Zeus, who at first rejects the hunters, but ultimately finds purpose in joining them. Her transformation is not instant. It is the evolution of someone who has faced too much too young. When she accepts Artemis's offer, her old weapons, including the powerful Aegis shield, are replaced by a silver dagger that shimmers with quiet restraint. Though smaller than a sword, Thalia's blade is no less dangerous. It fits her personality perfectly, compact, electric, precise. Her fights are explosive, full of stormy power, and yet her weapon reminds her to stay grounded, to remember her vow. She, like Zoe, understands that to serve Artemis is to carry more than a weapon. It is to carry a promise. Her silver blade pulses with that weight. It knows she is not just a demigod. She is a chosen immortal guardian of the hunt, forever frozen in time, her eyes holding storms and silence alike. These silver blades, made from celestial bronze alloyed with lunar magic, are special in that they harmonize with the night. They do not reflect the sun, but catch the moonlight, glowing with a spectral brilliance that confuses monsters and terrifies the creatures of darkness. They are deadly in silence, meant for surprise, for ambush, for speed and skill. The hunters themselves are trained not to rely on brute force, but on agility, coordination, and ancient instinct. Their blades become extensions of their movement, like feathers tipped in steel. They are weapons of memory too, for every blade is passed from hand to hand, sometimes for centuries, from one fallen hunter to another new recruit. The weapon is never buried. It is inherited. It carries the memories of each battle, each sister who held it before, each life given under moonlit skies. These are not just knives or swords. They are sacred heirlooms. When Zoe falls in the Titan's curse, her blade becomes more than a piece of metal. It becomes a symbol of sacrifice, of devotion, of the unyielding choice to live for something greater than yourself. And that is what gives these blades their true power. Not the metal or the magic, but the memory. Even Artemis herself, a goddess beyond mortal comprehension, respects these weapons as holy. She does not wield one herself, for she needs none, but she watches as her hunters train under the stars, their silver weapons flashing like moonbeams against the darkness. And in that, there is reverence. In that, there is something ancient and unspoken. Each time a new girl joins the hunt, she is handed a blade. It is small at first, light, easy to carry, but over time it grows heavy with meaning, with sisterhood, with history. These are weapons that age without rusting, sharpen without effort, and glow with a light that does not burn, but guides. They are weapons that never betray. Even Percy, who walks a different path, holds deep respect for these blades. He has watched them slice through monsters, deflect arrows, and defend the innocent. But more importantly, he has seen them used with restraint, with mercy. The hunters do not revel in battle. They end it quickly, quietly, with eyes that have seen too much. And yet, beneath all that discipline lies grief. For each blade also carries the reminder of lives cut short, of sisters lost, of centuries past, of wars that never seem to end. When Percy watches Thalia wield her silver blade in the Battle of Manhattan, he understands that it's not just another weapon in a war. It is a prayer in steel, a whisper in motion, a part of something divine. And that is what makes the blades of the hunters so different from the swords and spears of the gods. They are not forged in Olympus, but in choice, in loss, in silence. They do not roar. They do not scream. They simply appear and disappear, like moonlight between trees. And that kind of magic is rare. It's the kind you don't see coming. The kind that leaves no echo, but stays in memory. So as we follow the path of magical weapons in Percy Jackson's world, we pause here, under a silver moon, where young maidens practice with blades that remember, where the goddess of the hunt watches in silence, and where every glint of steel is a story whispered in starlight. These are not just weapons, they are vows, waiting. Some weapons carry honor, some carry history, and then there are the ones that carry betrayal. In the world of Percy Jackson, No blade casts a longer, darker shadow than Backbiter, the twisted sword of Luke Castellan. Unlike celestial bronze, which is meant to harm monsters, and unlike mortal steel, which wounds only humans, Backbiter is forged from both. A dual-forged abomination capable of killing demigods and mortals alike. Its very existence is a statement. This weapon is for turning against your own. It gleams with sickly silver on one side and warm bronze on the other, its edges never dulled, as if constantly thirsty for blood. Any blood. When Luke first unsheathes Backbiter, it's not just an act of violence. It's an announcement, a warning, that the son of Hermes has chosen another path. A path not of mischief or rebellion, but of full unapologetic treason. And yet, what makes Backbiter truly terrifying isn't just its construction, it's what it represents. Luke, once a hero, once a leader at Camp Half-Blood, turns that blade against his family, his friends, and everything he once swore to protect. Every time Backbiter strikes, it carries not only the pain of injury, but the echo of trust shattered. It's a weapon that doesn't just pierce flesh, it pierces memory, loyalty, and hope. The sound of Backbiter being drawn in battle carries a cold weight. It's the hiss of promises broken, the chill of watching someone you admired become something unrecognizable. Unlike Percy's Riptide, which feels like an extension of his identity, or the hunter's blades, which symbolize sisterhood and sacrifice, Backbiter is a mirror, a cracked, corrupted reflection of what could have been, a weapon that reminds us how thin the line is between hero and villain. And yet, Luke is not the only one in Percy's world to wield weapons that walk the path of betrayal. Throughout the saga, there are magical weapons, gifted with intention, but used for deception. Take the cursed blade mentioned in the Great Prophecy, the weapon that will end the world, or save it, depending on the hand that holds it. That prophecy haunts Percy and his friends, making them question which sword will strike the final blow and who will carry it. That kind of weight turns every weapon into a question mark, every battle into a gamble. Even Kronos, the Titan Lord of Time, wears betrayal like armor. When he possesses Luke's body in the latter books, he wields Backbiter himself, turning Luke into a puppet and the sword into a throne. The weapon, already tainted by Luke's decisions, becomes an extension of Kronos' will, a cosmic insult to the legacy of demigods everywhere. And Kronos isn't the only ancient figure whose weapon reflects betrayal. Consider Ethan Nakamura, the son of Nemesis, who takes up the cause of the Titans in search of balance and revenge. His sword, though unnamed, is sharpened by bitterness, and every strike is meant to correct a perceived injustice. He is not a villain in the traditional sense. He is a victim of imbalance, of the favoritism shown by the gods. But the blade he carries still cuts through the dreams of unity and peace, because when weapons are wielded in anger, even justice becomes warped. Betrayal, in the world of Percy Jackson, isn't just a plot twist. It's a recurring theme embedded in the metal of these weapons. They're not just tools of war, they're symbols of how easily pain can twist love, how disappointment can rot into treason. Even minor characters echo this sentiment. When demigods from both camps, Greek and Roman, clash due to misunderstandings, the weapons they raise aren't glowing with valor. They're glowing with fear, with miscommunication, with centuries of resentment. Each blade held between friend and former friend is a potential backbiter in disguise. What makes these weapons even more haunting is how human they are. They don't float in the air, enchanted and remote. They're not distant like Zeus's master bolt or Poseidon's trident. These swords and daggers are carried in sheaths, gripped in trembling hands, passed between allies turned enemies. They remind us that betrayal isn't cosmic, it's intimate. It happens between roommates, between siblings, between people who once stood side by side in the dining pavilion at Camp Half-Blood. And yet, even among these dark blades, there's nuance. Luke, the swords master, is not evil for the sake of it. His journey is a painful, complicated one. When he first wields Backbiter, he does so out of a sense of desperation, out of a belief that the gods have failed, that the system is broken, and that only through rebellion can the world be reset. That's what makes his betrayal hurt so much. It comes from a place that isn't entirely wrong. But the sword he wields, capable of killing both gods and mortals, symbolizes how his solution becomes the problem. In the final moments of Luke's arc, when he turns the blade on himself to stop Kronos, the act becomes a redemptive mirror. The weapon of betrayal becomes the weapon of salvation. He falls not as a villain, but as someone who remembered too late who he used to be. And that final twist, Backbiter becoming the sword that ends Kronos, cements it as one of the most emotionally complex weapons in the entire series. It's not just a cursed blade, it's a journal written in blood, a confession etched in steel, a memory too painful to hold, yet impossible to throw away. Even after Luke's death, the memory of Backbiter lingers. No one else dares wield it. It is not passed down like the blades of the hunters. It's not reborn like Riptide. It remains a relic, a cautionary tale. And in a way, that's its final betrayal. Even in silence, it still speaks. It reminds everyone who sees it of the thin line between justice and revenge, leadership and control, courage and despair. As we continue through the magical weapons of Percy Jackson's world, Backbiter forces us to pause, to reflect, because not all weapons shine with heroism. Some glow with regret, and some will always be remembered for the hands that fell, not for the monsters they struck. Some weapons are born not in fire, but in thunder, not in a forge, but in the hearts of gods. And when those weapons are given to mortals, the line between divine and human begins to blur. In the world of Percy Jackson, spears are more than just tools of war. They're extensions of divine will, lightning trapped in wood and metal, authority carved into shape. Perhaps the most iconic of these is the imperial gold pilum of Reina Avila Ramirez Arellano, the praetor of Camp Jupiter. Her weapon, elegant and lethal, represents more than just her skill in battle. It symbolizes her burden. Unlike the chaotic swing of a sword, a spear is deliberate, precise. It must be aimed, thrown with purpose. Like Reina herself, it does not strike blindly. It waits, it watches, and when it moves, it ends things. Her pilum, tipped with imperial gold, hums with the power to strike down monsters instantly, dissolving them on impact. But what makes Reina's weapon truly compelling isn't just the metal or magic, it's the discipline behind it. She is a daughter of Bellona, goddess of war strategy, not senseless destruction. Her spear is not just an extension of her power, it's a conduit for her restraint, her balance, her calculated leadership. In her hands, it's not about domination, but control. But she is not the only one to bear a god-forged spear. Mars, the Roman god of war, appears before Frank Zhang and gifts him with a legacy tied to ancient violence and the deep-rooted hunger of war. Mars's presence crackles like live electricity, and his weapons are not ornamental. They are made to kill, to conquer, to remind. The spear he manifests burns with an inner fire, almost pulsing with battle lust, not unlike Ares' own weapons in the Greek pantheon. The difference between Ares and Mars, chaos versus discipline, is reflected in their weapons. Ares would wield a jagged, cruel spear, more like a harpoon than a soldier's tool, while Mars would hand over something that gleams, balanced, unassuming at first, but devastating in capable hands. When Frank is chosen by Mars, it is not merely a blessing. It is a demand. He must carry that weapon, and with it, the burden of a god's reputation. This duality of spears continues with Clarisse LaRue, daughter of Ares, who wields her enchanted spear, Mamer. It crackles with electric current as if the rage of her father flows through its shaft. Mamer doesn't just stab. It explodes on contact. A weapon meant to intimidate and annihilate, it mirrors Clarisse's often impulsive temperament. When she uses it in battle, her enemies feel not just the impact of a weapon, but the emotional fury behind it. Yet even she, hardened and aggressive, knows that such power requires control, or it controls you. This lesson comes sharply during her quest in the Sea of Monsters, where her spear's failure represents a deeper emotional defeat. Because in Percy's world, weapons break when hearts are uncertain. But divine spears don't always look like instruments of destruction. Consider the magical hunting spears of Artemis and her hunters, sleek, silver, nearly weightless. These spears don't sing of war. They whisper of the moon, of the wilderness, of eternal oaths. When wielded by the hunters, they shimmer in the night like stars torn from the sky. Each one is a vow of chastity, of loyalty, of sisterhood. Their spears aren't symbols of power, but of belonging. Unlike the brutish or ceremonial weapons of male gods, Artemis's weapons feel personal. They are not used for glory, but for protection. Her spears move silently, cutting through lies and predators alike. They are weapons for those who walk alone under the moonlight, but are never truly alone. Then there's Annabeth Chase, who, while primarily known for her dagger and cleverness, briefly wields a Roman pilum during the battles alongside Camp Jupiter. In her hands, it transforms, not just into a weapon, but into a statement. A daughter of Athena wielding a Roman tool of war, intelligence guiding discipline, wisdom steering brutality. Her use of the spear, though short-lived, symbolizes a potential union between Greek and Roman legacies, one where ancient rivalries fall to shared purpose. This crossover of weapons, Greek to Roman, mortal to divine, keeps echoing across the series. When Jason Grace takes up his golden spear, gifted by his father Jupiter, it is both a blessing and a commandment. His spear channels lightning itself, like a portable thunderstorm, a reminder of his heritage as a sky god's son. And yet, even as it crackles with power, it doesn't corrupt him. Jason never lets the might of his weapon overshadow his moral compass. His spear becomes a lighthouse in chaos, guiding others rather than dominating them. He leads not with force, but with presence. His weapon, though violent in design, becomes a symbol of order. And yet, for all their beauty and might, these spears carry deep sadness. They are weapons that require distance. You do not swing a spear like a sword. You throw it. You let it go. It leaves your hand, your heart, and in doing so, it demands trust in your aim, in your decision, in your purpose. There is a loneliness in spear throwing, in trusting your power to land where it's needed, to not come back bloodstained by regret. In Percy Jackson's world, That emotional gamble makes every divine spear feel like a prayer sent into battle. And sometimes they miss, or they hit too well, or they fall into the wrong hands. The battlefield remembers. The gods may forget. The earth, riddled with old spearheads and broken oaths, does not. Even magical spears cannot escape this cycle. They too splinter. They too are forgotten when the war ends. Their divine glow fades, leaving behind only stories. And that's what lingers longest in these tales. Not the shine, but the silence afterward. When the last spear has been thrown, and the last echo fades into the hills of Camp Half-Blood, or the ruins of New Rome, what remains is not victory, but memory, of who wielded it, of why, and whether they ever truly let go. As we leave the realm of God-forged spears, we begin to enter the strange, enchanted world of cursed blades and enchanted artifacts, objects that blur the line not just between divine and mortal, but between magic and madness. Some weapons glimmer with divine power, but others hide shadows behind their shine, blades that whisper, that wound not just flesh, but soul. In the world of Percy Jackson, not every weapon is heroic. Some are cursed, some are haunted, and some are both. These aren't the swords you raise in triumph. They're the ones you hesitate to draw. They come with stories too dark to ignore and consequences too heavy to carry. One of the most notorious examples is the Stygian iron sword wielded by Nico D'Angelo. Forged in the underworld itself, Stygian iron doesn't just destroy monsters. It absorbs their essence. It consumes. When Nico slashes through an enemy, there's no glory, only silence. No remains, no second chances. The blade feeds on death like it remembers the river Lethe, and with each kill, it grows heavier, not in weight, but in memory. Nico, a child of Hades, carries it like he carries his grief, quietly, reluctantly, and with a cold edge that frightens even his allies. His sword isn't just a tool of battle, it's a mirror. A reflection of the boy who walks through shadows and has known more loss than most demigods twice his age. He never draws it with excitement, only necessity. And that makes it more terrifying than any thunderbolt or flaming whip. Another unsettling artifact is Annabeth Chase's dagger, a gift from Luke Castellan, once her friend, later her enemy. The blade itself isn't magical in the flashy sense. It doesn't burst into flames or call down lightning, but it carries a deeper magic, the weight of trust, betrayal, and unspoken love. Luke gave it to her when she was just a child, as a symbol of protection, and for years she held on to it like a tether to the past. Even after Luke fell to Kronos, even after the wars, she still wielded that dagger, because sometimes the most cursed weapons are the ones you can't let go of. Her dagger represents hope twisted by time. Every time she stabbed a monster, she wasn't just fighting for survival. She was trying to make sense of a friendship that shattered into myth and pain. In that way, the blade was haunted, not by ghosts, but by memories. But the dagger story didn't end with Annabeth. In the Trials of Apollo, her brother Malcolm mentions forging new magical daggers that retain some of her innovations. Still, none carry the same tragic legacy as Luke's gift. Speaking of Luke, his own weapon, Backbiter, was a cursed hybrid, half celestial bronze, half Stygian iron. It could wound both mortals and immortals, a rare and dangerous trait. Backbiter wasn't just a symbol of Luke's betrayal of Olympus, it embodied it. The celestial bronze side represented his heritage as a Greek demigod, a son of Hermes. The Stygian iron side showed his allegiance to Kronos, the Titan lord of time and entropy. Every swing of Backbiter was a contradiction, a clash of identities. Luke, torn between rebellion and redemption, wielded a sword that mirrored his duality. And when he finally turned against Kronos to save Olympus, it wasn't Backbiter he used. It was Annabeth's dagger. Proof that even cursed blades can find peace, if only for a moment. Another dark artifact with a haunting backstory is the dagger of Ethan Nakamura. A child of Nemesis, goddess of revenge and balance, Ethan was given a simple yet powerful blade by his mother. It was enchanted to strike at weaknesses, not of body, but of fate. Ethan believed in fairness to a fault. He saw the gods as unjust rulers and sought to reset the scales. His dagger, though small, was a scalpel meant to carve justice from chaos. But fate is a tricky thing to fight. When he tried to use it on Kronos himself, the blade backfired, and he paid the ultimate price. His story is a quiet tragedy of a demigod who believed he was doing right, only to fall in pursuit of balance. His cursed weapon didn't betray him. It fulfilled its design to punish those who dared tamper with destiny. Some daggers, though, are less about legacy and more about mischief. The Stygian steel blades carried by the Kyries, death spirits summoned in battles, drip with toxic venom. Not just physical poison, but emotional despair. One nick, one scratch, and a demigod could feel themselves unraveling mentally, doubting every choice. These blades are less weapons and more psychological warfare. Few survive long enough to describe them, and those who do rarely sleep peacefully again. Then there's the cursed scimitar of Hyperion's lieutenant, a blade forged during the Titanomachy, said to burn with eternal fire. Unlike celestial bronze or imperial gold, this scimitar wasn't meant to kill monsters. It was made to kill gods. Passed down through Titan loyalists, it carried a fragment of Hyperion's own power. When it appeared during the Second Titan War, it scorched the ground it touched. The blade didn't just kill, it erased. A reminder that not all magical weapons are bound to demigods. Some are relics from a time when the world bled starlight and rage. But not all cursed weapons are ancient. Some are born anew, created by Hephaestus's more experimental forges. One such item was a cursed dagger, designed to whisper lies to its wielder, telling them what they wanted to hear. It made the user feel invincible, right? Justified in their violence. Heroes who used it often found themselves isolated, suspicious of allies, convinced that only they knew the truth. It didn't matter how pure their intentions. The blade would twist them until their enemies were their own reflections. Thankfully, that particular weapon was sealed away beneath Camp Half-Blood's armory, encased in celestial bronze and submerged in holy water. But rumors persist. Some say the dagger still whispers. Others claim it vanished altogether. Perhaps it found a new hand. Perhaps it waits. Cursed blades also appear in the myths surrounding Hecate's followers. Daggers that blur the line between shadow and substance. Hecate, goddess of magic and crossroads, allows her chosen demigods to wield enchanted blades that phase through solid matter or slice through illusions. These weapons aren't cursed in the traditional sense, but they demand a price. Every time they're used, a fraction of the user's essence feeds the blade. Use it too often, and you become less. Not just tired, but faded, a shadow of yourself. The more you lean on magic, the more it takes. Such is the balance of power in the world of gods. One final dagger worth noting belongs not to a hero, but to a villain. Medea, the sorceress queen, possessed a jeweled dagger laced with ancient spells, one that could paralyze, blind, or turn blood into fire. She kept it hidden beneath her robes, using it only in moments of desperation or ritual. The blade pulsed with her own cruelty, and even the bravest demigods hesitated when they saw it drawn. Her death did not break the weapon's curse. It lives on, passed from hand to hand, from dark temple to forgotten vault, waiting for someone foolish or desperate enough to unleash its magic. And so, the cursed blades and haunted daggers of Percy Jackson's world remain, not in museums, not in myths, but in the corners of stories where silence lingers. They are not wielded with joy, but with dread. They are not brandished to impress, but to survive. And those who dare use them never walk away unchanged. As we lay these weapons down, the night wraps them in shadow. But we are not yet done. Beyond the blades lie the shields, helmets, and rings. Objects not designed to kill, but to protect, deceive, and sometimes to betray. In the world of Percy Jackson, it's not always the sharpest sword that saves the day. It's often the shield that holds firm, the helmet that reveals truth, or the ring that slips unnoticed onto a trembling hand before a final stand. Enchanted armor, shields, and rings don't just protect the wearer's body. They guard their fate, their identity, and sometimes their very soul. These relics are laced with divine energy, steeped in ancient enchantments, and carry the fingerprints of gods and titans alike. Take, for instance, the shield of Thalia Grace, Aegis, a replica of Zeus's own legendary shield. Gifted by her father, the king of the gods, Aegis bears the terrifying visage of Medusa, a petrifying face so fearsome that even monsters hesitate when it is raised. When Thalia holds it up in battle, the very air seems to shift, trembling beneath the silent scream of the Gorgon's stone-bound fury. And yet, for all its power, Aegis is more than a weapon. It's a burden. For Thalia, it reminds her not just of divine heritage, but of impossible standards, of being Zeus's daughter in a world that demands perfection. She doesn't flaunt the shield. She braces against it, like a storm she never asked to weather. Then there's the magical armor forged by Hephaestus himself, often worn by heroes of the prophecy. Percy Jackson once wore celestial bronze armor gifted by his camp, enchanted to resist fire, acid, and magical corrosion. Yet the true magic wasn't in its durability, it was in its memory. The armor held the scent of ocean spray, the scratch of battle scars, the echo of shouts in the arena. It was living history, absorbing every blow like it understood sacrifice. Annabeth's armor was similarly reinforced, crafted with clever enhancements she designed herself, straps that tightened with thought, plates that shifted to her stance. Her gear wasn't bulky or brute, it was agile, silent, perfect for a strategist. But armor in this world isn't always visible. Consider the mist-woven cloak worn by Hazel Levesque, daughter of Pluto. This enchanted garment allowed her to blend with shadows, becoming nearly invisible in low light. More than a tactical advantage, it symbolized Hazel's dual existence, half living, half bound to the underworld. When she moved through battle cloaked in mist, she wasn't just hiding, she was haunting. Then there are the rings, small, easily overlooked, but powerful beyond their size. One of the most famous is the ring crafted by Leo Valdez, infused with celestial bronze wiring and fireproof sigils. Worn during his many mechanical escapades, it granted him enhanced precision with machines and tools, essentially becoming an extension of his will. While not traditionally magical in the godly sense, Leo's ring embodied a different kind of magic, human ingenuity amplified by divine legacy. Another ring of interest belonged to Rachel Elizabeth Dare, Oracle of Delphi. Though not a warrior, she wore a ring gifted by Hecate that glowed when near breaches in the magical veil. The ring, simple in design, pulsed softly when the mortal world intersected too closely with divine interference. It served not as a defense, but as a warning, a compass for prophecy, letting her know when she was being watched, by fate, by gods, or something older. Then there are the cursed armors, those born not from protection, but from punishment. The armor worn by the giants during the Second Giant War was coated with ichor-resistant scales, forged in ancient volcanoes. Each suit of armor was meant to mock the Olympians, with grotesque imitations of godly symbols etched into the metal. They radiated darkness and despair, humming with forbidden enchantments that bled into the earth as they walked. To strike them wasn't just to chip metal, it was to battle prophecy itself. Another eerie creation was the armor used by Kronos during his possession of Luke Castellan. When Luke's body became the vessel for the Titan Lord, his golden armor shimmered with time-warping energy. It flickered, sometimes appearing as ancient bronze, sometimes as future-forged alloy, as if the metal couldn't decide what century it belonged to. Blows against it would slow, stall, or even bend backward. It wasn't just protection, it was manipulation, bending time and space to Kronos' will. Even more disturbing was the way the armor seemed to tighten around Luke's frame, not as a suit, but as a cage. It reminded everyone watching that power often imprisons more than it protects. Magical helmets also have their place in this world of myths reborn. One of the most iconic is the Helm of Darkness, worn by Hades himself. Though not typically wielded by demigods, its influence looms over their stories. The helm grants complete invisibility, not just to sight, but to memory, to thought. Those near the helm forget what they were doing, lose track of time, and feel a chill run through their soul. When Hades chooses to lend its echo to his children, as he did with Nico, it is not a gift, it's a test. Can you bear the weight of silence, of vanishing not just from vision, but from connection? Few can. Even items like bracers and greaves are touched by enchantment in Percy Jackson's world. Clarisse LaRue, daughter of Ares, wore wrist bracers that crackled with energy when she fought, not because they enhanced her strength, but because they absorbed rage, channeling her divine fury into focused strikes. When she was calm, they shimmered faintly. When angered, they sparked like storm clouds. They became both her weapon and her restraint. Perhaps one of the most emotionally potent protective items is Annabeth's Yankee cap, a gift from her mother, Athena. The cap grants invisibility when worn, and Annabeth used it in missions, sneaking into enemy territory or escaping ambushes. But the cap was more than a tool. It was a link to her mortal life, to afternoons with her dad in Manhattan. Every time she pulled it over her head, she wasn't just disappearing, she was remembering who she was before war, before prophecy. The invisibility it gave wasn't just physical, it was emotional, a pause button in a world that never stopped demanding. Some enchanted gear isn't wearable, but still protective. The Athena Parthenos, a massive statue of the goddess, served as both shield and beacon. It radiated a calming aura that repelled monsters and soothed the minds of nearby demigods. Though too large to carry, it was escorted across the land like a sacred relic, watched over by Reyna and Nico. In its presence, demigods remembered unity, not division. It was protection in ideology, not armor. A reminder that even in war, peace can be carried like a standard. Other subtle items include protective anklets, necklaces, and even tattoos. Camp half-blood beads, worn as necklaces to mark each year of survival, are not enchanted in the traditional sense, but they're protective in spirit. Each bead tells a story, a triumph, a loss, a war won, or a friend buried. They protect not through power, but through identity. They remind the wearer who they are, what they've survived, and what they still must face. In this universe, protection is rarely just about deflecting a blade. It's about grounding your heart when everything else spins out of control. Whether it's a shield raised against giants, a ring that glows in the dark, or a helmet that makes you forget your own name, these enchanted items do more than guard. They speak. They whisper stories of gods and demigods, of mistakes and miracles, of burdens shared in silence. And as night falls, and dreams curl like mist around memory, we leave these relics glinting softly in the dark, ready for the next demigod to pick them up and continue the story. Not all power in the world of Percy Jackson comes from swords or shields, or the bloodline of heroes. Sometimes it comes from the gods themselves, in the form of sacred relics and blessings so ancient that even Olympus holds its breath when they're used. These godly gifts are rare, unpredictable, and never free. When a deity bestows a weapon, a token, or a whispered enchantment upon a demigod, it is never just out of love. It is a contract, an unspoken pact that the recipient is now part of something bigger, riskier, and often more tragic than they can comprehend. One of the most iconic gifts in the series is the Curse of Achilles, granted, or rather inflicted, upon Percy in The Last Olympian. Following the same ritual that once made the original Greek hero invincible, Percy bathes in the river Styx, rendering his body nearly indestructible, save for one small vulnerable spot on his lower back, just like Achilles' heel. This gift is not an item, but a transformation. When Percy emerges, the world feels distant, and his body hums with a natural strength. Swords bounce off his skin, arrows snap against his chest, but so do emotions. Fear, love, and even hope begin to dull. The gift makes him a weapon, not a person, and that, in truth, is the god's design. Another sacred item is Hermes' magical bag, the one he gives to Percy in the Sea of Monsters. Deceptively small, this canvas satchel can hold objects of enormous size. Like a divine version of a wizard's pocket, it represents not only Hermes' domain over travelers and thieves, but also the trickery and convenience of the Olympian way. The bag holds emergency ambrosia, magical supplies, and more than once, it saves Percy from impossible odds. Similarly enchanted is Hades' key to the underworld, a skeletal iron relic that allows the bearer to bypass all boundaries of life and death. Though never handed to Percy directly, its presence is felt when Nico D'Angelo discusses it. This key is not simply a tool, it is the ultimate symbol of access and finality, the end of the road for all living things. Even the gods rarely touch it, for it reminds them of what they cannot escape. Then there's Annabeth's laptop from her mother, Athena. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary MacBook, but it contains a divine search engine that can access ancient records, trap layouts, monster weaknesses, and more. Every time Annabeth uses it, she is channeling the infinite mind of a war goddess. The screen flickers with knowledge older than civilization, yet like all gifts from Athena, it demands reason, logic, and sacrifice. The laptop isn't just a gift, it's a test. It's the goddess asking, Can my daughter solve the unsolvable? Even more symbolic is the bronze shield that Tyson, Percy's Cyclops half-brother, crafts for him. This shield, inscribed with images of Percy's friends and loved ones, isn't technically divine in origin, but it may as well be. Built in Poseidon's forge with fireproof bronze and love, it becomes a talisman of loyalty, of found family. It proves that godly gifts don't have to come from Olympus. They can come from a brother's hands. Then there's Hera's patronage, reluctantly bestowed upon Jason Grace in the Heroes of Olympus. While she never offers him a weapon or a trinket, her influence shields him from fatal harm and guides him subtly across continents. But Hera's protection feels like a leash more than a blessing. Her gifts are wrapped in manipulation, and Jason, though grateful, senses that every favor she grants costs something invisible. The favor of a god is like standing beneath a sword made of silk, beautiful, fragile, and deadly. In contrast, Apollo's sun chariot and musical relics are gifts given more freely, yet just as dangerous. Wilsalus, son of Apollo, sometimes channels his father's healing magic through sacred chants, imbued with divine resonance. These melodies can slow bleeding, cure poison, or calm madness. But in doing so, Will puts himself in emotional peril, acting as a vessel for a god who once burned too bright. Music becomes a weapon and a prayer all at once. From Poseidon comes the sand dollar, a small coin given to Percy before he descends into the sea's deepest trench. This token, light as a whisper, later becomes currency to unlock one of the ocean's ancient secrets. Like many Poseidon-given gifts, it is humble on the surface but immense beneath. The gods, after all, love symbols. They wrap hurricanes in seashells, war cries in necklaces. Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, grants her hunters silver bows that never miss, and arrows that glow like moonlight. These are wielded by girls who've sworn off mortal love and pledged themselves to eternal hunt. Their gifts shimmer, but their price is solitude. These relics are not mere weapons. They're chains made of moonlight and vows. Even minor gods offer divine relics. Hecate grants mist-enhancing daggers. Nyx blesses veils of shadow. And Nemesis once offered a coin with two faces, truth and justice, to a demigod facing a morally impossible choice. Flip the coin, she had whispered, and let fate decide. But what kind of gift is that? One that shatters the illusion of control. Even Gaia, the primordial Earth Mother, bestows gifts on her chosen children. These are usually curses dressed as blessings, strength that fractures the soul, visions that blind the mind. Giants like Enceladus are resurrected by such blessings, their bodies stitched together by the world's malice, fueled by divine betrayal. These gifts do not aid, they consume. And yet, demigods still accept them. Because sometimes when the world is ending, you don't look at the ribbon on the box. You grab what you're given and pray. Among the most mysterious relics is the Sibyl Scroll, once used by Rachel Elizabeth Dare during a prophecy trance. Covered in ancient Greek, its letters shift with the seasons, its ink never fades, and only those bound by oracle blood can read it. It's not a gift meant for battle. It's one meant to survive time. Then we have the Mark of Athena itself, not an object, but a trail. The daughter of Athena, chosen by the Mark, must retrieve a cursed statue across lands of fire and vengeance. The quest is the gift. The pain is the gift. Athena never gives lightly, and when Annabeth walks that path, bleeding and alone, she knows the truth. A god's gift is rarely a comfort. One of the most tender godly items is the coin of drachma given by Hermes to help summon iris messages. Though not powerful in battle, these coins offer hope, communication with loved ones, cries for help across worlds. For demigods far from home, the ability to see a parent's face or a friend's voice shimmering in a rainbow mist is as powerful as any sword. Lastly, the golden fleece, guarded by the dragon in the sea of monsters, may not be a weapon, but it is perhaps the most potent, divine object ever recovered. Hung upon Thalia's pine tree, it restores the magical barrier around Camp Half-Blood and heals the poison root of their only sanctuary. It is life itself, dripping with divine vitality. And when it glows in the night, humming with immortality, every camper knows this is not a myth. This is salvation. These godly gifts, cursed and blessed, small and mighty, are the soul of the Percy Jackson universe. They're not just shiny objects. They are symbols, trials, temptations. To accept them is to walk a tighter rope between mortality and fate. For when the gods offer a relic, they are not just arming a hero. They are placing a burden into the palm of a trembling hand and watching to see if it falls or flies. In the myth-soaked world of Percy Jackson, not every weapon gleams with heroism, and not every magical object brings hope. Some are etched with curses, soaked in sorrow, and burdened with legacies too heavy for even the strongest demigod to bear. These cursed items often appear as gifts at first, gleaming swords, enchanted masks, forgotten relics. But the moment a hand touches them, the price begins to whisper. Take, for instance, the blade of Backbiter, wielded by Luke Castellan, a son of Hermes whose path veered into betrayal. This weapon, half celestial bronze and half-tempered steel, is capable of harming both monsters and mortals, a blasphemy in the eyes of Olympus. While most demigod weapons are meant for defending against the threats of myth, Backbiter is a declaration of war against both worlds. It doesn't merely cut flesh, it severs trust. It embodies Luke's divided heart, his pain, and the bitter resentment that turned him into a vessel for Kronos. The blade is cursed not just in its magic, but in what it represents. A demigod who chose vengeance over healing. Then there's the necklace of Harmonia, a legendary object from Greek myth that makes a brief, terrifying appearance in the extended lore. Said to bring beauty, love, and eternal charm to its wearer, the necklace instead curses them with endless tragedy and betrayal. In the universe of Percy Jackson, whispers of its existence remain. Tales of demigods who wore it hoping for peace, only to find their lives unraveling with eerie coincidences, loss, and shattered relationships. The idea of cursed beauty reflects a deeper theme in the series, that even the gifts of gods often hide cruel intentions. And nowhere is this more evident than in the cursed blade destined to kill with prophecy. In the Heroes of Olympus, a terrifying line from the oracle predicts, "A half-blood of the eldest gods shall reach 16 against all odds and see the world in endless sleep." This prophecy clings to Percy like a shadow, and later it is transferred to other demigods like Jason and Leo, suggesting not just a cursed future, but a cursed weapon waiting in their fate. Some weapons in this world seem born from prophecy itself, as though Olympus crafts doom with iron and leather. Consider the cursed mask of Diocletian used in the blood of Olympus. This Roman relic allows its wearer to command legions of the dead, raising spirits long buried beneath the soil of history. But power over death is never a gift freely given. Those who wield the mask feel their humanity slipping, haunted by the memories of fallen soldiers, their minds flooded with centuries of war and vengeance. The mask grants command, yes, but at the cost of peace. Its wearer cannot sleep without hearing the voices of those they've risen. It is a crown made of ghosts. Another infamous relic is the maze itself, Daedalus's labyrinth, an ever-shifting magical structure of infinite corridors and dark intelligence. The labyrinth isn't a weapon in the traditional sense, but it has consumed more lives than most swords ever could. It adapts, learns, traps, and tempts. When Annabeth, Percy, and others venture inside it in the battle of the labyrinth, they are not simply navigating passageways, they are being tested by the curse of ambition. Daedalus infused the maze with his soul, and in doing so, trapped part of himself within it forever. The price of brilliance was isolation. The curse of invention was eternal consequence. And when a demigod steps into its halls, they risk losing not just their direction, but their identity. One of the most devastating cursed objects comes in the form of Ethan Nakamura's sword, an ordinary blade gifted with extraordinary tragedy. Ethan, a son of Nemesis, is granted this weapon as a representation of balance and retribution. But every time he uses it, fate swings wildly in unpredictable directions. Allies are hurt, enemies escape. The curse of Nemesis is that no action is without consequence, and the blade ensures that balance will always be restored, often in the cruelest way. Ethan's downfall is not due to lack of skill, but due to a cursed ideology that he cannot escape, one forged into the very steel of his weapon. Then there is the enchanted chalice of Hebe, goddess of youth, which appears briefly in lesser-known tales. Said to grant vitality and rewind wounds, this object tempts demigods into misuse. Those who drink too deeply from it lose their sense of time, regressing not only in body, but in memory, personality, and emotion. The curse of eternal youth sounds romantic, but in truth it is a trap, a loss of growth, of wisdom, and of the very pain that forges heroes. Within Camp Half-Blood lore, there are even stories of cursed armor, like the breastplate of Ares, a blood-red suit said to make its wearer invincible in battle. But the more it is worn, the more violent the wearer becomes. The armor feeds on rage, rewarding aggression with strength, until the user loses control entirely. It turns discipline into madness, courage into blind fury. And once removed, the former wearer is left shattered, shaking, their own actions echoing like war drums in their mind. Not all curses are ancient. Some are born freshly from pain. Percy's own pen, Riptide, while a gift from Chiron and once belonging to Hercules, carries a subtle curse of loneliness. It always returns to his pocket, no matter how far it is thrown. But this also means that he can never truly part with it. Even when he wants peace, the blade hums at his side. It reminds him always that he is a weapon now, useful only in conflict. It may protect him, but it also isolates him. The blessing of eternal readiness is, paradoxically, the curse of never truly resting. And perhaps most haunting of all is the throne room itself, the weapons not carried, but offered. When Percy is tempted with immortality after saving Olympus, he stands before the thrones of the gods, offered godhood as a reward. But the offer is poison. To accept would mean power, but also distance. Immortality strips humanity, rips away friendships, and severs ties to the mortal world. It is the most beautiful curse of all, an endless life of purpose without personal joy. Percy declines, and in doing so, perhaps performs his greatest act of heroism. Because not every cursed object is something you wield. Some are choices, doors, paths lined with golden leaves and hidden traps. To navigate them is to walk the line between legend and ruin. In the world of Percy Jackson, power is never free. Every magical artifact, every relic, carries echoes of those who touched it before, some who rose and some who fell. And for every hero who lifts a sword, or dons a ring, or drinks from a cup, the question remains, will they be the next tale of triumph, or the next tragedy carved into Olympus's stone? Among the relics forgotten by time, there exists a class of legendary weapons whose names are barely whispered even in the oldest scrolls at Camp Half-Blood, each forged with mystery and myth that surpasses even the gods' understanding. These are the weapons that don't gleam in sunlight or rattle in battle, but hum with hidden power, waiting for the right hands, or perhaps the right hearts. They are cloaked in shadow, obscured by spells, often guarded by creatures who themselves are the remnants of a forgotten age. And unlike the famed swords and spears you may already know, these tools of destiny live just at the edge of memory, like dreams you almost remember upon waking. There is the staff of Pylos, once said to command illusions so vivid that they became real to those caught in them, a tool believed lost in the caves near the cliffs of Delos, though some say a daughter of Hecate still carries its splintered remains. Then there's the whispering bow, a bow crafted not from wood or metal, but the petrified essence of a long-dead dryad queen, strung with the thread of fate itself. It does not shoot arrows, but memory's sharp moments of sorrow or joy that can pierce the heart of any monster, turning rage to reflection or chaos to calm. They say Apollo once refused to wield it, calling it too cruel, too beautiful, and too dangerous. There are also the teeth of Orthrus, twin daggers carved from the molars of the two-headed guard dog of Geryon, forged not to kill, but to sever enchantments, curses, and the invisible strings that bind demigods to ancient pacts. And deeper still in the magical archives, there is mention of the lantern of Lethe, a cold burning flame that, when swung in battle, causes enemies to forget why they were ever angry or alive. Most believe it was extinguished forever in the depths of the river Lethe, but a few recall seeing its pale blue flicker in the dreams of the oracle. But the most whispered of these forgotten weapons is the gauntlet of Mnemosyne, not a weapon in the traditional sense, but a silver-gloved hand capable of recalling the full truth of any moment in vivid clarity, including truths the gods have tried to erase. It is said that only those who have lost something they cannot name are allowed to wear it, and that when the truth it reveals is too heavy, it can break the wearer's mind. No one has dared wear it in over 100 years. These weapons are not made of celestial bronze or imperial gold, nor do they shine with godly glory. They are made from sorrow, secrets, and sacrifice. They do not roar. They whisper. They do not slash. They remember. Some say Chiron hides one or two in the stables, beneath the hay where even the Pegasi don't step. Others believe the forest nymphs hide them, weaving spells of forgetfulness around their presence. But there are campers old and new who have caught glimpses of them during Capture the Flag or on prophecies gone sideways. A glint in the moonlight, a soundless hum in the grass, a dream that felt too heavy to be only a dream. These weapons may never see war, and yet their quiet magic has changed the course of quests without ever spilling blood. A forgotten blade may sway the heart of a demigod at the right moment, A lantern lost in Lethe may light the path in Tartarus when all else fails. Even now, as you listen, perhaps curled in blankets, drifting towards sleep, the breeze outside might be rustling the branches of an old pine at Camp Half-Blood. And maybe, just maybe, that breeze carries the soft echo of a name, a story, or a weapon waiting to be remembered. So rest now. Let the famous swords have their glory. Let Riptide shine in legends. Tonight, we whisper the names that are nearly forgotten, the ones that live in the quiet, the ones that, like dreams, return when you least expect them. Let them drift through your thoughts like stardust. Let them hum quietly at the edge of your dreams. And should you ever find yourself in a place beyond maps, beyond myths, perhaps one of them will be waiting for you, ready to be remembered again. And so, little dreamer, as the stars begin to fade behind the gentle curtain of night and the embers of stories grow dim, let us walk slowly now back through the armories of gods and the silent hills of memory one last time. You've wandered through tales of blades that bend storms, spears that speak ancient truths, arrows lit with sunlight, and shields that remember the first wars ever fought on Olympus. You've touched the worn hilts of weapons passed down from Titan to demigod, wandered into the shadows where forbidden daggers wait, and listened to the quiet breath of swords that once sang in battle and now rest in peace. These were not just objects of destruction, but echoes of hope, loyalty, sacrifice, and courage. Each had a name, a history, a heartbeat, like the heroes who wielded them. Some rose in the hands of those chosen by prophecy, others fell into the grip of those tempted by pride. But all of them, even the most forgotten ones, even those rusting deep beneath a sea of monsters, or buried beneath the ashes of the labyrinth, held stories waiting to be heard again. You've walked beside Percy Jackson, his fingers wrapped around Anaklusmos, the pen that becomes a blade, the blade that has saved 1,000 lives, but carries the weight of one boy's choices across oceans and years. You've seen Annabeth with her celestial knife, wise and fierce and trembling with unspoken fears. You've glimpsed Clarice, Nico, Thalia, and others. Their weapons not just tools of war, but mirrors of the selves they've tried to understand. Perhaps as the world fades gently into silence, you're beginning to feel the truth tucked inside all of this. That these stories were never really about the weapons themselves. They were about what those weapons unlock: bravery in the face of hopeless odds, mercy where revenge could have lived, and friendship forged stronger than any enchanted steel. Tonight, you've been a guest in their world, a world where monsters breathe fire, and gods argue over clouds, and mortals are anything but ordinary. But more than that, you've stood at the crossroads of legacy and fate, where every swing of a sword changed more than just battles. It changed the hearts of those who dared to wield it. And now, as your thoughts grow heavier and your breath softer, let the images fade like gentle waves pulling stories back into the sea. Let the clash of bronze melt into the hush of dream fields. Let the torchlight of Hephaestus's forge dim into a single flicker, then into nothing, until only the warmth remains. You are safe now, little demigod. The monsters have been pushed back. The shadows have retreated. You hold no sword, and you need not fight. Not tonight. Just close your eyes and drift into a realm where even the fiercest weapons cannot follow. A place of still waters and soft winds. A place where even gods go to rest. Perhaps in your dreams, you'll feel the cool weight of Riptide in your hand, or glimpse the golden glow of a forgotten bow tucked into the branches of a dream forest. Or maybe, If you listen closely, you'll hear a whisper of steel meeting prophecy, of laughter between quests, of home beyond battle. Because in the end, it isn't the magic that makes a weapon powerful. It's the story, the one that lives inside you. And tonight, that story is ending gently, but only for now. For dreams, like legends, always return when the world needs them most. Sleep well, brave soul. You've earned your rest beneath the stars. Tomorrow, the world may need heroes again, but tonight, you are free to dream.